people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the mother relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this per tweet from Dan Raphael. Breaking. Per the IBF, Tszyu vs. Lubin, 154-pound eliminator purse bid set for July 30th has been cancelled. The IBF told me it received notification that Erickson Lubin is medically unfit and will not be able to fight within the time frame that the bout would have to take place. It was supposed to go down September 21st. For the second time, Tszyu vs. Lubin falls apart. What was supposed to be Tszyu versus Lubin. I remember
before the Tszyu versus Thurman fight got announced,
right?
Which subsequently became the Tszyu versus Fundora fight.
Before that, I remember there were rumblings about a Tszyu versus Lubin fight. And then, like now, it fell apart. For one reason or another, doesn't really matter. I think Erickson Lubin was going to lose anyway. Don't forget, Erickson Lubin is the guy who got knocked out in the Charlo fight only 34 seconds into it. Don't forget, Erickson Lubin is the guy who got his face rearranged by Sebastian Fundora.
Erickson Lubin is the guy who needed a gift decision over Jesus Ramos.
Erickson Lubin. I wouldn't give Lubin good odds to win that fight in America, much less in Australia.
So what now?
Well, I suppose that Tszyu could fight Jesus Ramos. He's the next man in line by way of the IBF's current rank standings. I suppose that Tim could fight him. This is intended to be an IBF eliminator after all, to crown the IBF champion's next mandatory challenger, the IBF champion being Bakram Murtazaliev. The winner of this fight becomes the mandatory to that guy.
You really think Erickson Lubin is medically unfit to fight?
No, I just think Erickson Lubin didn't want to have to travel to Australia. That's what I think it is.
It was.
PBC ain't got no goddamn money. They ain't got no goddamn money to do that fight in America. And what are you gonna do? You gonna build that as a pay-per-view? You build Tszyu versus Fundora as a pay-per-view, and that didn't sell anything. Tszyu versus Lubin, that wasn't going to sell anything either. The only hope to get an ROI on this fight is if it happens in Australia, not America. And Erickson, his team, they didn't want to go to Australia. Underneath it all, that's what I think it is.
He ain't sick. He ain't medically unfit.
It's been 2 times they tried to make this fight, and 2 times the fight fell apart.
That's not a coincidence.
So you can roll on Tszyu versus Ramos, though the ideal site for that fight, yeah, it's Australia, more than America. Tszyu versus Ramos in America is not a hot ticket. But Tszyu versus Ramos in Australia, that's box office.
That's pay-per-view.
But you know,
yeah,
for having Tszyu fight Jesus Ramos in place of Erickson Lubin in an eliminator, why don't the IBF just let this guy fight Bakram straight away? Why don't they just let him fight for the IBF title if one guy dropped out?
Skip the foreplay.
This is all about fighting for the IBF title anyway. This is all about challenging Bakram Murtazaliev for what he's got. To my knowledge, Bakram doesn't have a fight scheduled. He doesn't have anything going on. So if he's free and he's available and Lubin isn't, why don't they just let Tim fight Bakram in September?
Order that fight.
Put him on the spot. Make that fight happen.
Do that.
Aesthetically, I don't mind a Jesus Ramos fight. Jesus Ramos is a combination puncher and an aggressive guy like Tim is an aggressive guy. But if Bakram's free and he's not doing anything, why not just skip the formality and get to the main course?
Skip the foreplay.
I'll tell you that Tszyu's career had a lot more stability before he started doing business with the PBC. Think about it. The whole reason he jumped into bed with them was to get a Charlo fight, and he never got it. 2 times now, on 2 separate occasions. A Lubin fight was supposed to happen, but it didn't.
They told you were going to be fighting Keith Thurman on pay-per-view. That doesn't happen. Sebastian Fundora steps in.
There's no stability, and I've been watching Tszyu's career for, I'd say, the last 4 years, 4 going on 5, and he had a lot more stability before he started doing business with the PBC. But ever since then,
It's always a problem.
what's he getting out of that relationship? That is, what does he think he's getting? What do they think the PBC is doing for them? You know that a part of me thinks that because Tim don't know the ball from the bounce out here in America, he don't really know the scene, he don't realize they're giving him the runaround. It's always a problem with them. There's always something.
And it's been that way from the beginning of his partnership with the PBC. It's been that way.
I would much rather see Tszyu do business with Top Rank or do business with Matchroom. I think those would be better outfits for Tszyu to partner up with moving forward. Because if your next fight is going to be in Australia anyway, what exactly is the PBC bringing to the table? What's the point in partnering up with them? Matchroom does shows all over the world, not just in the UK market or the US market. They're all over the place. You partner up with them, that opens up a lot of doors.
And if your focus is making it in America specifically, well, Top Rank still has a partnership with the biggest sports network in the country, ESPN. You would have been better off going to them.
That upon jumping into bed with the PBC and coming to whatever agreement they came to, you know the people at the PBC made him a lot of promises. Tim should ask himself, did they deliver on anything they promised?
And what am I getting out of this?
Tszyu needs to start asking himself those questions. What's the point in moving forward with the PBC?
To achieve what?
Upstairs in super middleweight news from the desk of Mauricio Suleiman himself, the WBC president, the WBC has just received a letter from Samson Lukowicz Boxing, the exclusive promoter of David Benavidez, confirming that David will continue his career as a light heavyweight. He's confirmed as WBC 175-pound interim champion and is the mandatory contender for the winner of Beterbiev versus Bivol, set to go down later on this year. I believe that's in October.
So he finally made up his mind.
I figured that David and his team would announce whatever direction they're going to go in as news develops involving Canelo, that whatever they're going to do is based on whatever he's going to do. Earlier today, Mike Kopinger, via his sources, stated that they're very close to finalizing a Canelo Alvarez versus Edgar Berlanga fight. So I don't think it's a coincidence that shortly after that news broke, this news broke. Lance Pugmire tweeted that Samson Lukowicz told him David wants to create his own legacy. He doesn't want to waste any more time on Canelo. He wants to make his own path.
It's fine.
It's not what I expected. I half expected David Benavidez to continue to pursue Canelo Alvarez at 168 because he didn't really look great at 175. No, he didn't look like a monster with a 37-year-old Alexander Vajdik. The WBC gave him an extra 2 weeks to make up his mind, and when he didn't, they gave him an additional week. That was last week, so you know that they gave this some thought.
What were they thinking?
David can't continue to make 168 pounds healthy. He can't continue to make that weight match fit. That had to be a part of it, and another part of it is why should he kill himself, continue to kill himself to make that weight when Canelo Alvarez isn't next?
Canelo is fighting Berlanga.
After that, he might fight Terence Crawford if Terence Crawford beats Israel Madrimov, so why do it? Why stay there?
Why not press Canelo with his WBC interim status?
Because of what I told you, what I've been telling you. Under no circumstances is the WBC gonna strip Canelo of a belt to award it to David. They get more money so long as Canelo stays champion. So he knew. He doesn't have any leverage, interim champion or not.
He never did.
Believe it or not, I actually respect David's decision. As critical as I have been of him, this is what I've been saying the whole time. If you are who you say you are, and you like your chances, and you believe you're a monster, you feel like a monster, get out there and show it. And don't make your entire career and your entire calendar year about one guy, one fight. For a good number of years, that's what Demetrius Andre did. For a good number of years, Demetrius Andre turned down several fights. A fight with Matvey Korobov, Jermel Charlo,
Sergey Didivianchenko, Yanibek Alamkhanalai,
and Zach Parker. He turned down a lot of fights to the point to where in his own career he had very little to show for it. Granted that he's been a champion at 2 weights, he had no signature wins and no marquee value. His sole focus was Canelo.
Yep.
Focusing on Canelo, talking about Canelo, bringing up Canelo. It's always on and on with the Canelo.
And look at how he ended up.
I don't know if that's exactly what David Benavidez had on his mind when he made this decision, but he did have the right idea.
So do you think it's going to work out for him?
No, he's a hype job. He's a basic fighter, a very basic fighter who's been relying on a noticeable size advantage over the other guys at the weight to appear like he's a monster in the absence of actual ability. He might have looked like a monster at 168, but we just saw him at 175, and he didn't look like a monster, did he?
So you don't think it's going to work out?
I don't. I think now that he's made this decision, and he's going to stay at light heavyweight moving forward, he's that much closer to getting found out. He's that much closer.
Then what should he have done? If the guy can't make 168 healthy anymore, and he doesn't want to waste time on Canelo, but you think he's going to get found out at 175, then what should he have done?
Where's your problem? What David Benavidez should have done, he should have done a very, very long time ago. And we're talking about years.
What should he have done?
He should have unified. He should have unified by now. For the amount of time that David Benavidez has been at super middleweight, he should have had at least one unification match. He first became WBC champion way back there in 2017. Even if the other champions were on other sides of the street, there was at least one champion that was on yours, and that was Caleb Plant. And in 2019, I remember Caleb was calling for the fight, and it was David's promoter. It was Samson that was putting it off, saying they wanted to build it up into a pay-per-view. They wanted to wait. You guys ended up waiting so long that David lost his title on the scales, Caleb ended up losing to Canelo, Canelo ends up becoming undisputed, and you're left with what?
So that by the time you actually do fight Caleb, neither of you are champions.
And you have absolutely no leverage to use against Canelo Alvarez. None. You left yourself at his mercy because you didn't do what you needed to do early on.
When Canelo Alvarez went up to 175 to fight Sergey Kovalev, everybody knew ahead of time he's not going to stay up there, irrespective of what happens. He can go up there and knock out Sergey. He's not going to stay up there. He's going to come back down. When he does,
you want to hang on to your own title and pick up somebody else's. So even if some of the other champions at the weight were on other sides of the street at the time, there was at least one other champion that was on yours, and you put it off. You didn't fight him. Now,
look.
After Canelo Alvarez was all done with Sergey Kovalev, he drops down to 168. He starts on his undisputed run, and at this time, David already lost his title on the scales.
That was in late 2020 when Canelo Alvarez took on Callum Smith for his WBA and Ring Magazine titles. That's when he started on the undisputed run, and by then, David already lost his belt.
So what I'm telling you is that what David should have done, he should have done a long time ago, because if he would have stayed champion, Canelo wouldn't have had a choice but to deal with him. Hey, you guys played it. He had no reason to look in your direction. What exactly do you bring to the table?
Yes, it's mandatory.
Yeah, and so is John Ryder. So's Edgar Berlanga. So's William Skull. Take a number.
Please.
Now David's gonna campaign as a light heavyweight moving forward. He's targeting the winner of Beterbiev versus Bivol, and I'm still skeptical as to whether or not he really wants that fight.
We'll see.
But that he wants his own legacy, and he's gonna stay there. He's gonna try to do his own thing. I applaud that. I applaud him for that. That doesn't mean it's gonna work.
I think either Dmitry Bivol or Artur Beterbiev spank David Benavidez. He's too simple. He's too basic.
If he actually does fight the winner of that fight, the fight between them. Here and now I imagine that David's supporters, David's fans, are very angry because they never really wanted him to go up there, and now that he's staying there, they don't really like his chances against those guys. So you can expect a whole lot of Canelo bashing in the next few weeks and months.
Is this gonna leave a stain on Canelo's legacy?
That all depends on David's legacy, or the lack thereof. If this is supposed to be a stain on Canelo Alvarez's legacy, that he didn't fight David, we would have to remember David for something. He's got to give us a reason to remember him. Otherwise, him and his name will be lost in the annals of time.
Boxing history.
Because Canelo already made history. Canelo already has his legacy without David Benavidez. But what does David have without Canelo.
Oh, I know the David Benavidez fans are very angry right now. But how many of them are going to stay David Benavidez fans if he gets his ass kicked?
And he keeps getting his ass kicked. You know, like how Wilder keeps getting his ass kicked?
Do you think that people will still bring up his name after his career is over? To slight Canelo Alvarez's legacy.
We'll see.
But on some level, is this not Canelo Alvarez's fault, at least in part, that if Canelo really wanted the fight and pursued the fight would have happened?
Yeah, sure. If you turn a blind eye to everything Canelo Alvarez has done that David Benavidez hasn't done, everything Canelo's done over a longer duration of time, at a higher level, across more divisions, that you now want me to cry David a river that he's got to move up. That if he wants to do something with himself, he essentially has to do once what Canelo Alvarez has done 3, 4 times?
Move up.
Boo-hoo-hoo, the 6'2" guy that walks around at 200 and change has got to go to light heavyweight.
Poor him.
I told you guys a story a few months ago about how Naoya Inoue, who was not then what he is now, found himself in a very similar situation to David. He was trying to get Chocolatito in the ring. But at the time, Chocolatito was the bigger name, and he knew he was just a guy coming through, just a guy coming up. He made Choco an offer. Choco didn't want to bite. He wanted more money, wanted to fight somebody else instead, Carlos Cuadras on HBO. And he knew he didn't dwell on it. He didn't waste any time either, like David has been wasting his time. No, he decided to go up to 118.
The rest is history.
And at that time, Chocolatito was to the super flyweight division what Canelo is to the super middleweight division. At that time, Chocolatito was the biggest name, by and large, anywhere at or around those weights. But he knew he didn't waste any time on it. He didn't sit around crying, doing interviews, moaning about it. He went on with his career. And now, he's making more money now than Chocolatito was then.
So you know, if you believe in yourself and you believe in your boxing, you do what you gotta do.
But all the belly aching you're now seeing from David Benavidez's fans is because they don't believe in him that much. If they did, they wouldn't be complaining. They'd be celebrating that you're very close to getting a spectacular fight between David Benavidez and the winner of Beterbiev versus Bivol. You'd be celebrating if you liked his chances. You're not, because you don't.
You're afraid.
You're scared that at 175, he can no longer play the big man on campus. You're not the biggest puncher in the room.
You're scared.
Scared for David, but it's up to David to get the job done. It's up to David to prove that he is who he says he is. Now, he won't have access to the winner of Beterbiev versus Bivol until the following year, as the fight between them is set to go down later on this one. So will David Benavidez have a stay busy fight in the interim, or will he sit out the remainder of this year?
If he wants to improve his chances against the winner of that fight, he needs to further acclimate to this division and get used to it. He should, if he wants to, find someone to fight. Nobody too risky, but just another chance to get out there and keep the machine well oiled.
Against the full-fledged 175-pounder, that's what he should do, though I don't know if that's what he's going to do.
Because there is a long green mile in between what someone should do and what they do.
Like so many cold tiles you traverse across from the bedroom to the kitchen, looking for a midnight snack.
Too many midnight snacks is why David can't make super middleweight anymore.
But I don't pity him, or the gravity of his circumstances. No. Turkey al-Sheikh will pay you very good money to fight the winner of that fight. So win or lose, you're gonna make life-altering money.
Put the violins away.
He ain't doing nothing going to 175 that Canelo Alvarez hasn't already done.
More than once.